The screams behind the silk pillow. Mason hardly was only 5, but his nights sounded like war. Every night at exactly 2:11 a.m., the same thing happened. A child's scream ripped through the Hartley mansion, sharp enough to wake guards, servants, and even men who had survived gunfights without blinking. Then came the sobbing, the shaking breaths, the whisper of one terrified sentence. "Something touches me when I sleep, Dad." Silas Hartley owned Chicago's shadows. People called him a mafia chief in public, but in the darker corners of the city, they used a different word. Vampire King. He was not a myth, he was a ruler, cold-eyed and untouchable, with money that could move judges and fangs that could end a traitor in 1 second. And yet, when he heard his son cry, Silas became helpless. He tried everything that money could buy. Doctors, sleep specialists, rare medicines flown in from Europe, machines that monitored every heartbeat, every breath, every blink. 18 experts came. 18 experts failed. They all said the same thing. Medically he's fine. But Mason was not fine. His skin kept turning paler, his small body thinner, his eyes darker underneath like bruises made of sleeplessness. And the worst part was how Mason looked at his father after each nightmare, like he was begging to be believed. "You don't understand," Mason whispered one night, gripping Silas's shirt with tiny fingers. "It's inside my pillow." Silas forced himself to stay calm because fear was dangerous. Fear made men weak. Fear made kings make mistakes. So he ordered the room searched again and again. He replaced the bed, the sheets, the curtains, the carpet. He even had a wall open to check for hidden vents or secret devices. Nothing. Always nothing. And then, on the 6th month, the screaming got worse. Mason began refusing to sleep at all. He sat upright with his pillow pushed far away like it was a snake. Silas finally did the one thing he hated doing. He accepted help from someone outside his world. Not a famous expert, not a luxury clinic, not a supernatural advisor who wanted payment in secrets. A nurse from the public county hospital. A woman who worked double shifts and ate cold food in stairwells because she never had time for breaks. Her name was Elisa Monroe, 27, exhausted, and kind in a way money could not buy. When she arrived at the mansion gates, guards searched her bag like she might be a threat. She kept her face calm, but her hands were tense. She had seen danger before, not the kind with guns but the kind that came quietly, abuse, poverty, fear, sickness. Inside, the mansion looked like a palace. But Elisa noticed something most people ignored. No matter how rich the walls were, the air still held pain. Silas met her in a study lined with books and dark wood. He stood tall, broad shoulders, black hair neat, eyes gray and merciless. He looked like a man carved from steel. "You have one job," he said, voice flat. "Make my son sleep." Elisa didn't flinch. "I can't promise that," she said softly, "but I can promise I'll listen." Silas's jaw tightened at the word listen, because he realized too late that he had been doing everything except that. When Elisa entered Mason's room, she didn't start with machines. She didn't talk over him. She knelt to his eye level. "Hi Mason, I'm Elisa," she said, keeping her voice gentle. "I'm not here to tell you you're imagining things, I'm here to understand." Mason's eyes filled with tears right away, like he had been holding them back for months. He pointed at the pillow with a shaking finger. "It whispers," he said. "It tells me I should go to Mommy." Elisa felt cold run through her spine. Not because she believed in ghosts without proof, but because children did not invent that kind of sentence for fun. Not when they were this afraid. She looked at the pillow, expensive silk, perfect stitching. Then she looked at the boy. His face was thin, his lips dry, and his small hands had marks from scratching in panic at night. He had been fighting something even if nobody wanted to admit it. Elisa stood, walked to the pillow, and did something that shocked the guards watching from the door. She picked it up, felt its weight, and frowned. It was heavier than it should be. Silas entered behind her, silent. Vincent Crane, Silas's right hand, followed, wide-shouldered and watchful. The nanny Rosa stood near the hallway, eyes red from crying. Silas's voice was low. "What are you doing?" "Checking the one thing nobody bothered to check," Elisa answered. Then she took a small medical scissor from her kit, and with careful hands she cut a clean line along the seam. The room went still. Even the air seemed to pause. Inside the pillow was not only feather stuffing. There was a hidden black cloth pouch, sewn deep into the lining like someone had planned it carefully. Elisa's throat tightened as she pulled it free. Mason began crying, not from fear this time, but from relief. "I told you," he sobbed. "I told everyone." Silas's face changed. For the first time, the Vampire King looked like a father who had failed. He moved fast, dropping to his knees, pulling Mason into his arms. "I believe you," Silas whispered, voice breaking in a way nobody had ever heard. I'm sorry, son, I'm so sorry. Elisa held the pouch in her palm. It felt strangely cold, like it didn't belong in a child's room. They carried it to the study and placed it under a bright lamp. Elisa opened it slowly, careful, controlled, like she was handling something that could harm a patient. A strong smell rose up, dry bitter herbs and something older. Elisa laid the contents out one by one. A lock of light brown hair. Tiny nail clippings. A torn photo of Mason ripped across the face. A folded yellowed paper with symbols in dark red ink. And then last, something that made Silas go pale. A white gold wedding ring. He snatched it up so fast his hand trembled. Inside was an engraving. Caroline and Silas forever. Caroline was Mason's mother. Caroline was dead. Silas stared at that ring like it was a bullet aimed at his heart. I buried this with her, he said, voice rough. I put it in her hand. Elisa's stomach turned. Someone had opened a grave. Not just to steal, but to use a mother's memory as a weapon against her child. Vincent's voice went hard. This is not random, boss. Whoever did this has access. Silas stood very slowly, his softness disappearing as the cold king returned. Lock the estate, he ordered. Nobody leaves until I know who touched my son. Rosa covered her mouth with trembling fingers. She looked at Mason like she would throw herself in front of a moving car for him. Elisa took a breath, forcing calm. Sir, she said, meeting Silas's eyes, anger won't find the truth, we need facts. Silas looked at her like nobody had ever spoken to him that way. But instead of punishing her, he listened. Because she had been the only one to believe a 5-year-old child. Vincent returned with a list of everyone who had entered Mason's room regularly. Helena Hartley, Silas's mother, elegant and powerful. Derek Hartley, Silas's younger brother, charming and careless. Rosa the nanny. The family doctor. And the housekeepers. Then Vincent added one more detail that made Elisa's skin prickle. The security camera in Mason's room has been disabled for 7 months. 7 months? That meant this started before the screaming, before anyone noticed. Silas's voice was quiet now, the most dangerous kind of quiet. Find who disabled it. All eyes shifted to Rosa because she had the most access. Guards stepped forward to take her. Elisa lifted her hand, firm. Stop, she said. Rosa called me here. Why would she invite me to expose her own crime? Silas's gaze sharpened. A smart liar hides in the spotlight, he said coldly. Still, you get 30 minutes with her, prove what you claim. Elisa went to the small locked room where Rosa sat shaking. Rosa looked up with swollen eyes and whispered, I love that boy like my own. Elisa watched her closely, the way nurses learn to read truth in trembling voices. Rosa's fear was real. Her love was real. Rosa confessed the money transfer was for her mother's medical treatment back home. She confessed her own child had died years ago, and Mason reminded her of him. Then Rosa hesitated, and her voice dropped to a whisper. There is someone else, Rosa said, someone who goes into Mason's room at night. Elisa's heart beat faster. Who? Rosa swallowed, eyes wide. The grandmother, she whispered. Helena? Elisa left the room and returned to Silas with the information. Silas didn't deny it, but he didn't look comfortable either. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a truth he didn't want to see. Elisa spoke carefully. Let me talk to Mason again, he's the only one who knows what happens when the lights go out. Silas agreed. And that night, Elisa sat beside Mason's bed, speaking softly while the mansion held its breath. Mason, she asked, who comes in after you fall asleep? Mason's lips trembled. The grandma, he whispered. She sits on my bed, touches my pillow and whispers. What does she say? Elisa asked, keeping her voice steady. Mason stared at his hands, then said the sentence that turned Elisa's blood cold. She says I look too much like Mommy. She says she wishes I was with Mommy. And she says Uncle Derek deserves everything more than Dad. Elisa felt the puzzle click into place with a horrible clarity. This was not only cruelty. This was inheritance, power, greed, a family war. She went straight to Silas and told him exactly what Mason said. Silas's fists clenched so hard his knuckles whitened. He didn't shout, he didn't break anything. He simply turned to Vincent and said, Bring Derek here. And somewhere inside the mansion, hidden behind silk and wealth, the real monster smiled, because the nurse had finally stepped onto the battlefield. The grandmother's perfect smile. Derek Hartley arrived 30 minutes later, escorted like a guest but watched like a suspect. He was younger than Silas, prettier in a soft way, with blue eyes and a nervous habit of rubbing his hands together. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his face. "What's going on?" Derek asked quickly. "Is Mason okay?" Silas didn't answer right away. He just looked at his brother with the quiet fury of a man counting every lie he had ever ignored. Vincent placed a file on the desk. "Derek has a gambling debt," Vincent said, calm and deadly. 2 million. Derek's face went gray. "That's not, I can explain." Silas stepped closer, towering. "Explain why my son is being tortured while you drown in debt." Derek's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't hurt him," he swore, voice cracking. "I'm weak, I'm stupid, but I'm not evil." Elisa watched Derek closely. His panic felt real, but real panic could still belong to a guilty man. So she did what she always did, she asked the question nobody else asked. "Derek," Elisa said gently, "when was the last time you were in Mason's room?" Derek blinked fast. "I haven't been," he insisted. "I swear." Silas's jaw tightened. "Then why did Mason say your name was spoken over his pillow?" Derek froze. Just for a second. But that second was enough. Before anyone could push further, the door opened and Helena Hartley entered. Silas's mother looked flawless, silver hair styled perfectly, expensive dress, posture like a queen. Her face carried concern like makeup, applied carefully. She moved towards Silas with a warm voice. "My son," she said, "I heard the house is locked. What is happening to my grandson?" Elisa noticed it again, the same thing Rosa had felt. Helena's smile did not live in her eyes. It lived only on her lips. Helena looked at Elisa, polite but sharp. "And who are you?" Silas answered, colder than usual. "The nurse." Helena's gaze flicked to the desk, to the black pouch, to the ring, and Elisa saw it just for a heartbeat. A flash of satisfaction, quickly buried. Helena placed a hand on her chest. "Oh dear," she sighed, "how horrible, someone must be trying to frighten the child." Elisa stepped forward, respectful but firm. "This wasn't a prank, ma'am, this was planned, we'll need honesty from everyone." Helena's eyes narrowed slightly. Then she smiled again, smooth as glass. "Of course, I only want what is best for Mason." Later, when Helena left the room, Silas stood still for a long time, staring at the door like he had never truly seen his mother before. Elisa spoke quietly. "Sir, I need to ask about Caroline." Silas's breath caught. "My wife," he said, voice low. "She died 2 years ago, car accident." Elisa didn't accuse, she simply asked. "Were the brakes investigated? Was anyone checked?" Silas's eyes widened. Because he realized he had never questioned it. Grief had made him accept what he was told. Vincent pulled the old maintenance logs. And when he returned, his face looked wrong, too serious, too pale. "The car was serviced 2 days before the accident," Vincent said, requested by Helena. Silas's world cracked. He didn't move, but his eyes did, storm-dark and disbelieving. Elisa could almost hear his heart breaking, not from loss, but from betrayal. That night, Elisa found a hidden truth in the house staff's whispers. A housekeeper admitted Helena paid extra money to keep the camera under repair. Another staff member admitted seeing Helena near the child's room long after midnight. Elisa understood then. Helena wasn't acting alone. Someone helped her. She found that someone in the quietest place. The family doctor's office. The doctor avoided her eyes when she asked about the herbs found in the pouch. And when Elisa pressed, he snapped. "You're just a nurse." Elisa's cheeks burned, but she kept calm. "I'm just a nurse," she said, "and that's why I notice things you ignore." She saw it then, a faint red stain on a drawer handle. Old ink. The same kind used on the curse symbols. Before she could open the drawer, footsteps approached. A soft sound, elegant, measured. Helena's voice floated in the hall. "Sweet nurse," she called, "are you lost?" Elisa turned, heart pounding. Helena stood there smiling, holding a tray like a loving grandmother. "Tea," Helena said, "you work so hard." Elisa smiled politely but did not drink. Because she saw Helena's fingers. A thin pinprick mark like she had been working with needles. And Elisa remembered the title. The boy screamed in pain. The nurse opened the pillow and found needles. Helena leaned in closer, voice soft. "You should be careful, dear," she whispered. "This family eats brave women alive." Elisa's stomach tightened, but she met Helena's eyes. "I don't scare easily." Helena's smile grew colder. "We'll see," she said and walked away. Elisa stood alone, realizing the truth. The curse was real. But it wasn't magic alone. It was human cruelty wearing a perfect face. The Vampire King learns to trust. Elisa didn't sleep. She stayed near Mason's room watching the hallway, listening for soft footsteps. Around 2:11 a.m. the air changed. Not with sound but with pressure, like a storm entering the house. Silas appeared in the dark like a shadow that belonged there. His eyes glowed faintly, not human. Not fully monster either. A king who had fought beasts and men, now guarding one small boy. "You should rest," Silas said quietly. Elisa shook her head. "If Helena is coming tonight, I want to see." Silas watched her for a long moment. He was used to loyalty bought with money or fear. But Elisa was different. She stood there exhausted, underpaid, underestimated, and still refusing to step back. "You're stubborn," he said, almost like he didn't know whether he respected it or hated it. "Children don't get saved by polite people," Elisa answered. Silas's mouth tightened, then he nodded once. They waited together in silence. At 2:11 a.m. Helena's door opened. She stepped into the hallway in a silk robe, hair loose, face calm like she was going to pray. In her hand was a thin object, metallic. A needle. Elisa's breath caught. Silas's body went still, predator still. Helena reached Mason's door and paused. Then she whispered, not knowing she was watched. "Soon." Silas moved, fast, silent. He caught her wrist before she could enter. Helena's eyes widened, but only for a second. Then she recovered her mask. "Silas," she gasped, "you startled me. I was checking on the child." Silas's voice was ice. "With a needle?" Helena laughed softly, trying to make it sweet. "It's for embroidery, dear," she said. "I was repairing his pillow seam." Elisa stepped forward. "Why was a black pouch sewn inside?" she asked. "Why was Caroline's ring stolen from a grave?" Helena's smile finally cracked. Just a little. A small tremor in her lips. But then she regained control. "You're accusing me because you want to feel important?" Helena hissed, dropping the grandmother act. "You're nothing here." Silas's eyes darkened. But Elisa lifted her chin. "I may be nothing to you," she said, "but Mason is everything to me right now." Helena's gaze turned sharp as blades. And in that moment Silas saw it clearly. Not love. Not grief. Not family. Only ambition. Vincent arrived with guards. And Helena's voice turned smooth again. "You can't do this," she said. "I'm your mother?" Silas stepped closer. "And Mason is my son," he said. "Tell me why." Helena's face hardened. "Because Caroline ruined you," she spat. "She made you soft. And Mason is her ghost." Elisa's heart broke at the cruelty. Silas's expression didn't change, but his eyes did. They looked like a man mourning two deaths at once. Helena finally confessed the truth in fragments. Not with tears but with pride. She wanted Derek to inherit because Derek would obey her. Silas would never. Caroline had been a threat. And Mason was the last chain tying Silas to Caroline's memory. "But I didn't want him dead," Helena lied quickly, then corrected herself. "Not at first. I only wanted him weak." Elisa realized the horror. The cursed pouch was a mix of superstition and cruel ritual. The needles were practical pain. The whispers were psychological poison. And suddenly Elisa understood the real lesson of the story. Monsters weren't always born with fangs. Sometimes they wore pearls. Silas didn't strike Helena. He didn't spill blood. Because power without control was not justice, it was just violence. Instead, he ordered Helena removed and placed under guarded confinement, with evidence documented, staff statements recorded, and authorities involved where appropriate. Not revenge. Justice. That night Mason slept for the first time in months. Only 2 hours but peaceful. Elisa sat beside him and cried quietly, not from fear but from relief. Silas stood at the door watching her. He didn't know how to say thank you. Kings like him were not trained for tenderness. "You believed him," he said finally, voice rough. "When I didn't." Elisa looked up, eyes tired. "Then learn from it," she whispered. "Believe him every day." Silas nodded, and in that nod something shifted. Not romance yet. Not even hope. But respect, the first brick in a bridge. A crown earned by kindness. The next days were not simple. Helena fought like a cornered animal, using money, lawyers, family reputation. Derek tried to run. Vincent caught him before he could leave the city. When questioned, Derek finally admitted he knew his mother was doing something. He claimed he never asked details, because part of him wanted to benefit without getting his hands dirty. Elisa looked at Derek with quiet disappointment. "Silence can still hurt people," she said. That line stayed with Silas. Because he understood it too well. His silence had hurt Mason. His silence had let Helena move freely. His silence had been weakness disguised as control. Silas made a decision. Not as Mafia chief. Not as vampire king. But as a father. He exposed the truth. He removed Helena's influence from the house. He cut Derek off from inheritance until legal outcomes were settled, and he demanded Derek seek real help and take accountability instead of hiding behind excuses. He strengthened protections around Mason. But more importantly, he became present. He stopped outsourcing fatherhood to money. Mason began to heal, slowly. He still woke sometimes, scared. But now, when he whispered, "I'm afraid," someone believed him instantly. Elisa tried to leave after her contract ended. She told herself she didn't belong in this world of velvet darkness and dangerous men. But as she packed, Silas stopped her near the front door. "You can go," he said, "but I don't want you to." Elisa's heart tightened. "That's not how this works," she whispered. "You're powerful, I'm just." "Don't say just," Silas interrupted, voice low. "You saved my son with something I couldn't buy." She looked at him, really looked. Behind the cold mask was a man learning to be human again. A king learning humility. A predator learning gentleness. Silas did not confess love dramatically. He didn't promise fairy tale perfection. He offered something rarer. Respect, safety, choice. "I won't trap you," he said, "but I will ask you to stay and I will earn it daily." Elisa's eyes burned. Because she had spent her whole life being overlooked. By managers, by rich patients, by people who treated nurses like background furniture. And now the most feared man in the city was looking at her like she mattered. So Elisa stayed. Not as a servant, not as a trophy, but as a partner in Mason's healing. Months later, on a quiet night, Mason slept through until morning. He ran into Elisa's arms laughing. Then into Silas's. And Silas held him like he was holding the future. In the final scene, Silas stood before his household and guards and said something that changed the entire family culture. "In this house we listen to the weak," he said, "because weakness is often just someone waiting to be believed." And Elisa realized the true crown of the story wasn't gold. It was kindness. It was humility. It was justice without cruelty. Because the moral was clear. Never judge someone by status. Never ignore a child's voice. And never confuse power with worth.